Silver Falls is an indie horror series made by Sungrand, a one-man studio based in Australia that focuses around the quaint little town of Silver Falls. However, this quaint little town isn't as normal as it looks. Strange things keep happening, and strange creatures keep appearing. Each game in the series has a very distinct feel and style that matches the time period when the game takes place. And the fact that everything about the games, from the visuals and artwork to the coding and the music, is all done by one person, really gives each entry a real labor of love feel that big studio AAA games just can't replicate. Not only that, but the series represents a wide array of genres, and it boasts an impressive number of entries, considering that the first game, 3 Down Stars for 3DS, was only released 4 years ago. And since then, there have been 4 more 3DS games, 3 Wii U games, a Vita game, a Game Boy Color game, a browser game, and now 3 Switch games. That number is even more impressive when you include the ports and remasters. This is one such remaster. Ghoul Busters was originally released in mid-2022 for the 3DS as part of Sungrand's last hurrah slew of 3DS and Wii U games, and it's actually the one that got me into the series. When the 3DS eShop closed, however, Ghoul Busters became unobtainable, despite being an excellent game and my personal favorite indie platformer. As such, Sungrand made the decision to answer the prayers of fans and give the game a Switch remaster, now sporting HD visuals as well as a slew of visual effects and screen color schemes. Ghoul Busters takes place in the early 1990s, and as such, has an aesthetic intentionally reminiscent of the original Game Boy, hence why the game's initials are GB. It follows 2 young best friends forever, Starlin Allardyce and Atticus Longdraw, on their adventure-turned-nightmare in the woods. The 2 boys had gone into the woods one night to play Ghoul Busters, pretending to be the heroes from their favorite television cartoon, but they quickly stumble upon real monsters lurking in the woods, as well as adults from the town who seem to know more about the strange goings-on than they're willing to admit. Now their playtime has turned into a very literal fight for survival. Armed only with their toys, the 2 children have to use their wits, agility, and the luck and survivability that comes from being the main characters to make it to morning. The game is a 2D platformer, although one that was obviously designed with the 3DS's stereoscopic 3D in mind. As such, there's a little bit of a learning curve on Switch. There are obstacles and traps that swing back and forth between the foreground and the background, and there are platforms that spin around in circles, so that you have to time your jumps for when the platforms are along the x-axis, and get off before they rotate to face along the z-axis. It's definitely doable. The high-resolution graphics make it fairly easy to get a feel for the movement of these obstacles, but it's not quite as naturally intuitive as playing on the 3DS with 3D enabled. Each of the 2 characters, Starlin and Atticus, play somewhat differently. Starlin is a little bit slower in jumps, and attacks with a hockey stick that seems to deal a little more damage and do some serious knockback to enemies. Atticus, on the other hand, moves much faster in the air, attacks from a distance with a slingshot, and trades some of that damage and knockback for attack range. Personally, I preferred playing as Atticus for most of the game, although I have to admit that Starlin did feel more useful to me in the last few levels. The game isn't very long, but what it lacks in length, it makes up for in quality. There are 9 levels and 3 bosses, one at the end of each 3-level stage, and they are, as one might hope, increasingly challenging. On level 1-1, for example, I only died once. By level 3-3, you'd have thought I was playing Super Meat Boy with how frequently I was dying. By the time I'd cleared the final boss, I had died 421 times during my playthrough, and it would have been a lot more if I hadn't had items to use. Between levels, you get a chance to spend the bottle caps, the game's currency, kinda like Fallout, that you've collected thus far to buy items for later use. And fortunately, you're free to go back and replay levels to grind out more bottle caps if you find that you need items but can't afford them. There are also box tops hidden throughout the levels as well, and each level where you end with 3 box tops gives you a special item that you can't normally buy. Fortunately, these box tops carry over from level to level, so you don't have to hunt down 3 in one level. It's fine if you get 1 in one and 2 in the next level. The best part about the game's transition from 3DS to Switch is the visual effect options. The game already looked fantastic in HD, but some of these effects add to the atmosphere of the game, like the fog and the rain effects, while others actually make it a little bit harder to see, but they are really cool effects and are there simply due to the rule of cool, like the wool and the retrographic effects, for example. Others, like the old TV effect, don't really enhance the horror vibe of the game, or make it any easier or harder to see, but they do add sort of a distinct vibe of their own. My personal favorite, the old movie effect, simulates the anaglyph 3D effect from old 3D movies, by adding slight red and blue effects. And if you have actual red and blue 3D glasses, it does create a very subtle 3D effect. It's nowhere near as effective as a 3DS's stereoscopic screen, but it does give a subtle 3D effect to what is, in reality, a non-3D screen, and that's pretty cool on its own. In addition to the visual effects, there are numerous color effects that you can enable. Don't like the green look of the original DMG Game Boy? Make it pink. Wish you were playing on a truly black and white screen like the Game Boy actually produces in theory? There's a gray color. Do you wish, for some reason, that you were playing this on a Virtual Boy and giving yourself a horrible migraine? There's a red color for that. Want it to be just generally radical? There's a neon blue color. Mixing and matching different screen colors and visual effects was one of my favorite parts about playing this remastered version of the game for the first time. There's so many different combinations to try, and each of them really do have their own unique, distinct feel. One of my favorite things, not about this game specifically, but about Silver Falls as a series, is the whole connectivity between games, courtesy of the Code Linker system. Jarrell, the developer, really went out of his way to make sure that these games connect to each other in some way. The way it works is that one Silver Falls game, let's say Episode Prelude on Switch, gives you a blue code in its Code Linker menu. Then you plug that blue code into the Code Linker menu in, say, Ghoul Busters on 3DS or on Switch, and it spits out a yellow key code. Plug that yellow code back into Episode Prelude, and a character from Ghoul Busters is now playable. That's just an example. I don't know if that particular example is actually viable, but that's the gist of how it works. Most games can connect to most other games to unlock something. In the case of Ghoul Busters, there's nothing to unlock in this game, but it can unlock content in other games. Jarrell designed this system to be kinda like Amiibo, but without the need for any additional purchase, and as sort of a bonus for buying the other games. Although he has stressed multiple times that he actively encourages folks sharing codes with friends who may not have all the Silver Falls games, or maybe who got into the series after the 3DS and Wii U shutdowns and can't obtain all of the games. Really, he just wants people to play and enjoy what he's made, because he's not just a developer, he's also a gamer. Now that 4 of the games are unobtainable due to being locked on Wii U and 3DS, and with Jarrell's adamant stance about never porting White Inside Its Umbra off of the Wii U, due to the fact that he specifically designed it to take advantage of the Wii U's unique control scheme, that encouragement to share Code Linker with other fans is really important. Silver Falls Ghoul Busters is an extraordinary platformer. It's short and extremely challenging at parts, but at no point does it ever stop being fun. It doesn't feel unfair, and you get to the end enjoying what you've played, but feeling satisfied, not feeling like, oh, there really needs to be more. It's got its moments where you can tell that you're being directly trolled by obstacle and enemy placements, and Jarrell's been open about the fact that he did place a couple of troll obstacles there, but it never gets to the point where you want to rage quit. It's always just reasonable enough to make you say, okay, one more try. I got it this time. There's also just this unexplainable magic that comes from a game made entirely by one guy who is genuinely super passionate about gaming, and who makes games not that are going to make him a lot of money, but that he thinks people will want to play. The games he would want to play. It's made in Unity, so it's got its unpredictable quirks, but those are significantly less common in the 3DS original. And the game's got a pretty good autosave system just in case you run into one of those bugs. The music is absolutely phenomenal and fits the vibe of the game perfectly. And you'll hear the lo-fi voice saying bummer every time you die in your nightmares, I promise you. But It's a wholly satisfying, enjoyable, and charming platformer from start to finish. I enjoyed this game more than any other indie platformer I've ever played. No exaggeration. And that's for reasons I can't quite put my finger on. But regardless of why, I honestly cannot recommend this game highly enough. I'm thrilled that it's no longer trapped on the 3DS, because this is a game that really deserves to be played and enjoyed by as many people as possible. My rating for Silver Falls Ghoul Busters on Nintendo Switch is an A.